Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, Automating SAP Operations. I'm Tina Yang from the Digitate marketing team, and I will be joined by Mandar Bhattavekar from Product Engineering. Mandar has been with TCS for over 22 years and now leads our Ignio for SAP product, which is a cognitive automation system for SAP operations. Before we begin, please note that if you have a question at any point throughout the webinar, feel free to submit it through the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. We will gather them from Mandar, and he will answer as many questions as possible after the presentation. All right, let's get started. Mandar, over to you.
Thank you, Tina. Welcome, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are geographically, but welcome. I'll just quickly run through what Ignio for SAP Operations stands for, and at the end we can take a few questions as well. To start with, Ignio as a product essentially is a cognitive platform. The whole idea is to empower people to do more, and what I mean by that is essentially fixing problems before they happen. Right, essentially taking away labor-intensive tasks, allow people to focus on forward-looking, strategic, or more important activities rather than the mundane activities, and also to avoid being in a firefighting mode all the time. So thereby focus on better things. That's essentially what Ignio is for, and thereby empowering people to do more, do better. Digitate as a unit within is a joint venture of the data consultancy services itself, and this specific unit within that is something that we started about 2 years ago. This is a second birthday that we have celebrated last month. Ignio being its flagship product today, it's trusted by quite a few Fortune 500 companies. Today, on the infrastructure side, we are already managing about more than 1 million infrastructure resources. And more importantly, this is being a completely new idea. A lot of innovation has gone in, investments have gone in to bring in more new inventions. About close to 70 patents are already being filed. We should be receiving some of them very soon. Well, on the recognition part, Ignio has been recognized significantly by various different organizations. The most important one is being declared as the best enterprise application for artificial intelligence at the AI Connect. This is the AI Connect award that was at the AI Summit last year in San Francisco. This was like an award given recognizing the industry leaders with more comprehensive and effective solutions across industry. Similarly, the Big Innovation Finalist Award and different statements that we get from industry analysis we hear as when they compare multiple different products across the globe in the same space. So quite a few recognitions that Ignio has now got already, and kind of people have been able to appreciate what Ignio brings to the table from a cognitive point of view, from an artificial intelligence point of view, from a machine learning point of view. So that kind of gives an overall view of where Digitate and Ignio in specific stands for. So as I said, Ignio started with the infrastructure services, and now then kind of moving up the value chain. We are getting into the application space, and we start with the off-the-shelf applications, which is especially the SAP. That's what we started with, looking at a big business. So from a SAP operations point of view, if you look at SAP as an application itself is very complex due to the scale and diversity that it has, multiples of business processes, large transactions that happen across different functional modules, and the fact that SAP itself has a lot of configurations and customizations, and those configurations again keep changing the master data, it has to continue to keep up to date. That brings in a lot of complexity in the whole application management. And on the other hand, there are knowledge silos, and I'm sure you would appreciate that there is a difference in the people and the skills that are there at different levels, from a technical layer, which is basis, to the functional layer, to the business operations layer. And then even within the functional layer, whether you're talking of MM, whether you're talking of SD, FICO, the expertise is there with different people, and hence anything that needs resolution or anything that needs to be done has to cut across multiple people, and thereby, because of the lack of end-to-end visibility, many a times it takes a lot of time and hence a large MTTR or mean time to resolution. That's very clearly. And then because of many of these master data inconsistencies or access issues or the user not knowing how to go about things, there is a lot of surprises and fires that keep coming in. The impact of change is not very easily assessed, and the whole lot of things that start coming in. And it is with this that we thought you can bring a lot of this expertise at the same level, and you can resolve some of these issues if not eliminate. The long-term idea is to eliminate the problems rather than fix the problems or automate only the problems. This is how we are looking at from a vision point of view. So what is Ignio? As a solution, Ignio for SAP operations is nothing but a intelligent virtual expert that takes responsibility. What I mean is essentially when I say expert, Ignio has out-of-the-box pre-built set of library of skills, knowledge that can perform various different actions in the SAP environment, whether it's functional or whether it's technical layer, doesn't matter, but lots and lots of actions that you can take based on the pre-built skills that we have, that Ignio has been modeled with. And from an intelligence point of view, Ignio builds understands the workflow patterns, understands the various different data sources that provide understanding the context of the environment, and builds the blueprint. And once this blueprint is understood, then you can understand the normal behavior by building a graph model and through machine learning techniques. It is the combination of this expertise that has been built through various different autonomous actions and the intelligence to contextually understand what is the right action for the right purpose. Ignio is able to act as an intelligent virtual expert, and then Ignio can be placed before it goes to the support operations personnel, to the sense that only if Ignio takes the things first. If Ignio is not able to resolve, or is not able to take action, can be passed on to a human for human intervention to be taken as an action by somebody else, typically an L2 or an L3. That's how it is. Just for you to let you know that Ignio is SAP certified, in the sense that SAP has certified Ignio, and what essentially that means is Ignio integrates well with the SAP based on SAP's published standards. It does not duplicate or violate any inherent SAP functionality, and also does not disrupt any of the SAP. And SAP has actually tested this product, so that that's how it could certify the product itself. Having said that, what does Ignio bring to the table? Ignio brings to the table three primary benefits in terms of improving the business agility, improving the manageability of the SAP operations, so to say, and overall reduce the operational risk impending due to certain situations. When I say improve business agility, as I said earlier, it is largely the MTTR in terms of end-to-end visibility and the end-to-end time it takes for performing any action or any kind of resolution of problems, so to say, that arise due to either because of the complexity of the system itself or because of the fact that there are multiple people involved. It does autocorrect functional errors. So this is what is typical self-heal, as we call it. And as long as the understanding of the problem and the blueprint is modeled in SAP for that particular entity or the document, for example, in question for the functionality that we document. So Ignio has, as I said earlier, this pre-built of library of functions, and it also is a model for blueprint and a model that is required to intelligently solve that problem. So Ignio is loaded with these and then kind of later on self-learn. It is due to this that Ignio is able to auto-correct many of the functional errors it has pre-built knowledge for. and then prioritizes and, for example, remediates the IDocs also. For example, as you all know, IDocs are interfaces between multiple systems, so you can actually prioritize and correct. I'll come to those things as well. But just to give an idea that the whole idea is to build an intelligent command center, improve the overall business agility. On the other hand, it also improves the manageability of the operations, right, in the sense of managing multitudes of basis tasks that are that typically people perform and perform them efficiently, thereby reducing the time, as well as more importantly also bring down the effort for doing the things, along with any functional tasks in terms of master data updates or in terms of configuration changes and so on and so forth. It also importantly brings down the, as you would understand, the batching activity through OSS nodes. Ignio can provide a very accurate guidance on the guidance of the critical patches to be applied. So that kind of is the most important. In fact, in most of the activities that are autonomously performed, the real challenge, and I would say some intelligence required, is in the pre-activity and the post-activity rather than the actual task itself. And that's what it makes it a little more intelligent virtual expert rather than just an expert. And then it reduces operational risk through Ignio kind of builds a lot, has given a lot of predefined health checks as ready for business checks kind of thing, post-event sanity checks. We already have quite a few, about 20 odd checks. I can talk about it. Some of them we are able to check that, Ignio is able to check proactively, thereby avoid any problems down the line, which can lead into certain fires or lead into certain issues in the long run. And also, very importantly, Ignio can check system compliance against the industry standards, whether it is to do with the technical standards or at the basis layer, or it's the functional standards at an enterprise standards at a functional layer, whether it's to do with invoices, whether it's to do with POs, whether it's to do with whatever, I mean, any kind of functionality. So this is the way Ignio typically brings to the table multitudes of values, so to say, and benefits to the customer by how we can help them. Moving on, so what are the core features of Ignio? Ignio essentially is kind of the three primary things, which is in the sense of learn, resolve, and prevent. All the core features are kind of classified into each of these. So if I can take a quick look at what learn is. Ignio, as I mentioned earlier, Ignio builds as a part of the intelligence layer, it builds a unified, real-time blueprint, which kind of brings in a 360-degree enterprise view, helping identifying the relationships and shows the links and brings connection between the technical layer to the functional layer to the business layer, and also end-to-end visibility that can happen. So what you see in this chart below that, I hope you can see it on your screen, is there are three models, which is the business scenario, which kind of, for example, the P2P, the O2C, it's like a four-level process layer. You can understand down to the transaction code. It actually can capture the business layer. For example, solution manager offers the business process hierarchy. You can, or you could be maintaining it yourself somewhere outside, and then kind of ingest that into the Ignio as part of the blueprint. Similarly, there is a functional component layer which for all the functional entities such as purchase requisitions, purchase orders, invoices, goods receipts, and so on and so forth, as you can see. And then the third is the technical layer, the software component layer, both at an application component layer within the SAP application layer, from the SAP ECC application to down to the lowest, like tables and objects and BAPIs and so on and so forth. That's the entire hierarchy of the technical layer also. And on the other hand, the deployment layer, which is a SAP being deployed on the host and database and application server and so on. So this is kind of brings in a whole unified view. That's what is used. As I just said, various different sources that each of these models that are required, whether it's a solution manager, whether it's SAP data that I can collect from, or the data table from which I can collect the bill of material, technical bill of materials, or various different infrastructure components. So this is the way the enterprise blueprint is built. As an example of how do I utilize this from a technical point of view is like what you see on the screen here is Ignio collects various metrics, and one of the metrics that I can talk about here is the dialogue response time. SAP does calculate the dialogue response time, which is nothing but end-to-end time it takes for any transaction from the screen. Ignio is able to collect that data and build a profile of that, thereby coming up with a normal behavior of that, any of these dynamic attributes like this. Builds up a prediction, uses a prediction model underneath to analyze and identify a potential breach of the threshold in the near future. For example, what you see here in the graph is the dialogue response time on a day-to-day basis. As you see, slowly the time is increasing over time, and Ignio is able to predict that in 3 months' time, actually on a particular date, then in a 6 months' time, a particular date like Jan 23, as you can see here on the screen, is actually going to violate or cross the worst possible time that that the SAP system is supposed to behave with as a acceptable behavior. So it is better to, so you kind of recommend actions to be taken beforehand rather than wait for the problem to happen. And those actions could be in the recommendation could be in the form of increasing the work processes for dialogue processes, or it could be increasing the capacity of the CPU and memory, whatever. I mean, at the end of the day, as the number of users increase, it is important to increase the capacity provision also. That's one example that I'll talk about. The other ones I'll come as part of that use cases that I'll talk about. But having talked about the learn aspect, how Ignio builds the blueprint and understands the context to the normal behavior. Once we understand the context, now Ignio can perform actions. Today, we have significantly focused ourselves on the procure to pay and order to cash kind of processes. By and large, around that, there could be some additional things, but we are largely focusing on, when I say procure to, it's largely the purchase order down to the delivery, and when I say order to cash, from a sales order down to the outbound delivery. So kind of end-to-end. And typically what we are talking about through all these mechanisms is a significant reduction in mean time to resolution, whether it's the request or the response. As an example, to start with from a P2P or an O2C process, as I said earlier, Ignio has about more than 120 functional bots across FI, MM, and SC modules to update or change or create any kind of reversal from the master data and the configuration data. So all the master data updates or any kind of configuration changes, as an example, if you see from an MM viewpoint, whether it's a material vendor or something, that master data needs to be changed, the production can be done, or the configuration changes in purchase group, which more importantly, it is not just the change in the production, but actually configuration changes have to go through the dev to QA to production transport request, and that kind of end-to-end automation is done by Ignio. That is the most important thing, autonomously, bringing the end-to-end thing. And then, as I said earlier, today we are covering by and large the master data and configuration changes which are related to P2P and O2C scenarios. But as we speak, this what I termed initially as the expertise or the skills that Ignio has to perform certain actions, these are the ones, and this is, as we speak, it is continuously growing. The numbers are growing as we speak today as well, and Ignio can perform more and more actions autonomously. The other aspect from a functional viewpoint is, I'm sure most of you would understand that there are these IDocs that are required to interface between multiple systems. I mean, the SAP instance connected to other SAP instances or external third-party systems through IDocs for that messages to be processed. Ignio can help monitor those IDocs either as a specific on-demand request or as a scheduled activity. What is more important is that, as you see in the graph above as an example, Ignio can actually have multiple different dimensions to see the same IDocs that have come, and especially the failed IDocs, through whether across what different business processes have the majority of them fail. I mean, failure across different business processes or failure across different partners with which SAP system is interacting with or different scenarios. So it's as part of the monitoring, ignio can present itself with a multi-dimensional view for this IDocs failures. More importantly, as you can see here, what is circled as attention, ignio now once it opens up each IDoc, it can actually break down the structure and understand what functionality does it serve, and then relate it back to the business process hierarchy and say which of these IDocs relate to critical business functions, or it relates, each one of these IDocs have high financial impact. Based on these two criteria, again, these are the two criteria we have configured today, but we could add more. One can build in knowledge to add more and more such criteria. As I said earlier, ignio today is able to bring out that, as you see here, the 10 IDocs out of the 354 are more important and need to be taken on priority. And this is the value, because today IDocs are monitored by basis people, and there is no way the basis people understand the functionality and know which of these 354 are really important and which of these are something can stay for some time before it has a larger financial or larger business impact to the system. And that's what brings in a lot of value, and thereby avoid a lot of false positives as well as avoid a lot of down the line risk that this may create. So that's how ignio brings value. Addition to that, now ignio does not only look at the failed IDocs, but for many of the IDocs which are failed, ignio can auto triage those faults and identify the root cause. So what you see on the screen now is two things. One is ignio is able to do the analysis. So while you see a symptom at a higher level, for example, in this particular evidence that is shown here, there are this before and after, which means before ignio could do anything and after ignio fixed the problem, what is the scenario? That's what it shows as evidence. So before the actual action, ignio takes an action, it does the root cause analysis, and it has looked at the entire blueprint and traversed the blueprint using the knowledge model and understood that what are the probable causes in this scenario for this purchase order not to be being closed. And based on that, ignio is able to take action in this particular case and actually force close the purchase order based on the criteria that is already available. And ignio is able to then still keep the invoices and goods receipts open to be able to close it, to even receive goods even after the closure. So that kind of flexibility and that kind of model-driven. Now, what is important? So we have 60 plus errors in terms today, or errors that ignio can handle. More importantly, there is no code written for each of these 60. What ignio has is a pattern that has been built to solve, which essentially looks at the influencers in the blueprint. Based on for each of the influencers, it takes the health of that particular node. Based on that node, it can tries to see what kind of status it is with respect to the threshold and what value it is supposed to have, and then kind of drill down the root cause. And based on the root cause, either just recommend the fix, or if it is approved to solve, in the sense that ignio can actually send out the approval request to whoever is supposed to approve. Once approved, then ignio can take action, or it could be pre-approved, in which case ignio goes ahead and takes the action. So ignio can either give just a recommendation, or it can actually solve the problem self-heal, and that self-heal could mean actually editing the IDoc and reprocessing the IDoc, or it could actually be changing some of the master data which is required as per the right setup that is there in your instance. So all in all, ignio is able to do the end-to-end in terms of monitoring the IDoc, to prioritizing the failed IDoc for processing so that there's a minimal business impact down the line, to self-healing and then reprocessing. So the whole end-to-end, thereby bringing down the whole responsibility on individuals to look at IDoc failure. Then there are multiple system health checks on the technical. What I spoke about was on the functional side. On the technical side, you also can do monitoring in terms of the health checks. again, either on demand or can be scheduled to do from 20 plus or ready for business steps. For example, it could check for all the RSC connections between multiple service systems across each other or multiple instances across the system, or look at the internet connection manager status or multiple updates that have failed pre and post event, all kind of work processes, all kind of health check that can do to ensure that the system is in a healthy, stable state for all different operations that it can perform during the day. Now, this check can be done once in a day, it could be done multiple times in a day, it could be any kind of a post-event activity check or to ensure smooth operation. What is important also is for some of these checks, engineer can actually go ahead and self-field for this if they are critical enough, or they have been, and the knowledge module has already been built for that. So it is able to do it. So one of the examples also at the bottom you see it is able to do ABAP dump analysis as well actively. Further to that, engineer is able to do a multitude of basis and security operations autonomously. There are 15 plus basis operations which are already pre-built as part of the library of tasks that Ignio can do. As an example, what you see on the center is that the different types of entities that Ignio touches as part of the basis activity. The blue ones are already there, the others are just getting into place as we speak and should be released in the next release soon. For example, as you see on the left side is the user management set of actions, whether it's creating the user or changing the profile or assigning role and say resetting password and multitudes of them. So there are multitudes of these actions on each of these entities. For example, with respect to jobs, it can also it can start the job, stop, reset, change the status, put it on ice, off ice, and so many different actions. That is able to do cover, and remember that as part of the basis activities, there could be significant activities which are even non-ticketed. In fact, for that matter, many of the basis activities are non-ticketed, so that it typically does not get accounted where the effort goes in. So you can kind of reduce that effort as well. That's a very significant autonomous, and thereby overall improves the efficiency and agility in basis operations. And the third aspect is the prevent, as I said earlier, in terms of proactive actions that you can take to prevent certain risk that is there. And compliance is one of the important ones. As you can see, it can check proactively against multiple industry standards in the areas of finance and control, in the area of material management, whether it's purchasing release strategy or tolerance limits or negative stocks and things like that, or whether it's sales and distribution in terms of return orders or sales memos and outbound controls and things like that. As well as on the technical side, which is more in terms of user management, whether it's the password length, whether it's the password expiry, and whether it's to do with logs maintained or not, whether it's to do with the security profile. I mean, multiple of that. Segregation of duties is also an important aspect in terms of checks that there are no chances of people playing fraudulent activities using multiple roles that they play. So thereby the segregation of duties is very clearly maintained in the SAP instance. These are kind of compliance checks that you can do and come up with a report. What you can see on the next here is actually across these areas that I mentioned, it actually comes up with not only the numbers in terms of the number of controls which have passed or failed, but more importantly also comes up with a risk score. And that risk score again is configurable as to what constitutes low risk versus a medium risk versus a high risk, right? So in this particular case, for example, the overall risk score is 7.13, which seems to be a very high risk scenario, because that means that there are a lot of controls which have failed in this particular case, and that could cause a lot of concern from a business viewpoint, not just a technical viewpoint. And the bottom table kind of is just an expansion of the basis controls and kind of specify how it is. What is more important is that there are about 150 plus controls across this basis and security options, security controls that we have. And further down the line, we'll also look at how we can remediate some of these critical ones to bring the system back into more stable, more reliable, and more sustainable form. So this is kind of what compliance can do proactively. One of the examples which I talked about earlier from a more basic activity is patching, right? It's an important activity that to apply. SAP releases multiple nodes every week for that matter, and not all nodes you are able to apply at regular intervals. So what is now important? The real challenge is how to identify which nodes are really critical that I must apply and which nodes are so it's not a patching activity, actual patching activity, which SAP itself provides automation for, or in certain cases there has to be a manual intervention. What is more important is the ability to do the pre and post activity in a much faster and much more reliable way. So it's the pre-activity of saying which nodes I should apply. For example, there are these multitudes of nodes that SAP is releasing. You analyze all of them and says that there are only these two critical nodes which are very critical to apply, for example, out of the 30 odd that I looked at for the last 3 months. Because of the fact, and again, there's a intelligence that applies in the context of your instance as to which nodes become critical to apply, that you must apply, or there are some nodes which are important, recommended, but there is no criticality to it. There is that it is relevant to your system, but it does not relate to any critical business process or any critical transaction or any kind of important financial impact. So that is how it is, and then there are multiple other nodes which could already have been applied, or things which are not applicable at all, and you see some of them are not applicable. This is how, and what you see at the bottom is essentially evidence of the graph evidence of why, which are the critical packages that it is, this node impacts, and why and which process does it finally impact. It kind of starts relating the technical layer to the functional to the business layer, and says that while it may be okay at a technical layer to keep applying nodes one after the other, it's important to apply the ones earlier which are more business impacting. So that's why. So that's the whole idea of reducing the risk. So the earlier you apply the critical nodes, the safer, the reliable, the secure, the stable system is. That's the whole idea. So these are some of the aspects which I thought I would just touch upon. The entire, as a later part of engagement, you can run through all the use cases, but I thought here I will touch upon some of these use cases just to give a flavor of what this product is. From an integration viewpoint, kind of on the left side connects to the ITSM, in the sense continuously taps into the ITSM system, whichever it is, whether it is a service now or remedy, it needs to for any other SAP itself. It could build adapters to more, but these three adapters are already pre-built, and then actually can e-bonds to the tickets, executes the thing using a JCO connector to the SAP system. Through RFC call, it can execute an existing BAPI function, or it could execute any custom BAPI function or a custom program as we have done, and accesses the data repository to connect and get the data back. So the entire intelligence sits in the Ignio layer. It connects to the SAP system just to fetch the right data that is required or execute the right action at a specific entity level on one side. On the side, update the ticket back once the action is over. That's how Ignio connects with these systems. At the end of the day, idea is to give put minimal load on SAP system, at the same time perform actions autonomously. Having said all this, the summary is Ignio builds a comprehensive blueprint connecting layers, technical to functional to business, eliminates interfunctional dependencies and knowledge silos across people, definitely improves stability by autonomously resolving certain issues in a very faster, timely manner, reducing the MTTR, reducing the operational risk, and proactive checks, reducing the overall TCO by bringing in efficiencies, and more importantly, empowering people to perform higher-end jobs rather than just the standard stuff as part of their application maintenance services, and thereby reduce the operational risk. So that's what I thought I would cover from a product viewpoint. I would hand it over to Tina for any kind of questions that have come up, and we could try and answer them as much as possible.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mandar. We have quite a few questions, so let's get started. First question.
Sure.
Is Ignio an interface to SAP, or is it a tool implemented in SAP?
No, Ignio sits outside SAP. And as I showed in the integration diagram, it actually integrates with SAP through the JCO using RFC calls and executing certain business APIs or APIs as they are called, or there could be custom programs either as part of Igneo's pre-built library or any other, and executes those functions. So Igneo sits outside SAP and executes actions on SAP through the JCO. That's how it is.
Okay, great. Next question. Can Igneo identify an event for which IDoc is not triggered?
So with respect to IDoc, there are two issues. One is the IDoc not getting triggered, and second is not coming into the picture into the SAP system. And second is once it gets into the system, it fails to execute what it is supposed to do. If it does not get into the system, then it's part of separate monitoring at a technical layer which can be looked at, and whether the problem is at the network, whether the problem is at the MQ layer or whatever needs to be looked at from an infrastructure viewpoint. But once it comes to the SAP system, then it fails. So Igneo addresses the failure from a functional viewpoint also. So there is one at the technical layer, other is at the functional layer.
Okay, thanks. Next question. Can it detect invalid data in IDoc? For example, we have a lot of scenarios where IDoc fails due to invalid data, such as special characters.
Right. Igneo does address the failures of IDoc because of incorrect data in the IDoc itself, and that incorrect data could be special characters as well. So yes, Igneo does the causal analysis. So when Igneo looks at the data and tries to understand in the context and tries to do a causal analysis, it does understand that a particular value is not the right value that goes in, it does not match. So obviously it understands that this is a problem, and if approved, pre-approved, or based on approval request and the authorization given by the administrator or the right authorized person, Igneo can actually edit the data and reprocess the same outcome. That's how it is, and self-heal the same.
Okay, thank you. Next question. How much time will it take to deploy in an environment? What are the resource and license requirements?
Igneo as a product does require, it's a licensed product. Obviously, customer has to buy a license of Igneo before deploying. Igneo is deployed as a standalone application, as I said earlier. It requires specific hardware as per some specification which we can share offline. Once that is provisioned, the necessary required number of VMs are provided, and Igneo can be deployed on those VMs. And the deployment takes us about a couple of weeks, but what is more important is the blueprint ingestion. From an ITOps perspective, the number of sources are significant, and hence it takes a little longer. But in SAP scenarios, because the number of sources are less, except for the business process hierarchy or any kind of dynamic data that needs to be ingested has come from outside, example, any third-party monitoring system, for example. For all those ingestions into the blueprint may take longer. Typically, it takes anywhere up to 3 months for this entire end-to-end process of deploying the product to actually get it being live to go to actually have minimally the health check kind of capabilities running on the system. So that's what it is. But yeah, it could be shortened if the data is only coming from the SAP instance, much shorter.
Okay. When you say it is certified by SAP, what do you mean?
Right. As I mentioned earlier, SAP has certified Igneo, and what that means is Igneo integrates well with SAP based on SAP's published standards for integration and execution. It does not duplicate or violate any of the inherent SAP functionality, but actually complements it. So actually, Igneo complements what SAP already offers as certain features, whether it's SAP ECC itself or whether it's Every Solution Manager or GRC. So SAP does not necessarily replicate the same functionality. And then it does not disrupt the SAP certified objects that are already deployed in the SAP system. So that's what certificate. So SAP has actually assessed the product both from an integration architecture and design point of view, as well as looked at actually tested the product, all the features that are there to ensure that it does not violate any of the above statements that I just made.
Great, thank you. Next question. Okay. Okay, next question. When IGNIO monitors monitors SAP in real time, what resources does it need? For example, in terms of CPU or memory?
So, as I said, IGNIO either sits on top of the monitoring, when I say it's a standalone application and connects to the monitoring system for all the data it captures with respect to the monitoring data, CPU memory, or it can take the data from SAP itself. So IGNIO does not, IGNIO only goes to the SAP system to actually at the time of a specific action or to get the data from SAP for the specific use case that we are in the context of the use case that we are solving or executing. So it does not really put any load on the SAP's system, CPU and memory, so that's why it does not impact anything on that side. IGNIO has its own requirement of CPU and memory as a standalone application, which I kind of mentioned earlier, can be shared separately as part of the resource requirement. But definitely it does not require anything on the SAP system additional, that's for sure.
Okay, and this is a follow-up to that. This question is, does it need a dedicated application server?
Yes, it does. And actually, it does come up. IGNIO has its own underlying application server, so it's already bundled into that, and it comes up as a package. So IGNIO is a standalone application with its own application server and with its underlying database and so on and so forth. So the entire appliance is what gets deployed on the provisioned hardware for IGNIO as a standalone application.
Right. Okay. Following question, would IGNIO send any email alerts in case of failures, or should someone keep monitoring it?
So two things. One is, yes, IGNIO can send notification if it is configured to do so. Yes, there is a configuration that you can have to send notification to the appropriate people when any actions are taken or when any kind of fixes are done, or any kind of anomaly seen. IGNIO can be configured to send notification. On the other hand, as I said earlier, IGNIO picks up a ticket from an ITSM system like a ServiceNow, for example. And once the whole processing is done, IGNIO goes back and updates the ticket with either as a closure, or if it is not able to close, it updates the ticket and reassigns the ticket to in a manual queue to somebody as configured in IGNIO to do so. So, for example, if IGNIO is not able to resolve the ticket, it actually assigns it to a L2 person or a L3 person as it would be required to do so as part of the configuration. So once it goes to it updates the ticket with the necessary configuration, or it closes the ticket, again the ITSM system would communicate back to the person through its own workflow and through its own notification, right? That's how it works. Either IGNIO sends out the notification if it is configured to do so, and it does allow good configure that. Second is it kind of goes back and updates ITSM, and ITSM can have its own workflow to do that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next question. If we deploy IGNIO for SAP, would we not need monitoring currently done by the SAP Solution Manager?
That's not actually true. It's a good question because, as I said earlier, IGNIO does not replace monitoring systems. So it actually sits on top of them in the sense that Solution Manager has TechMon and BPMon to do monitoring of the CPU, memory, dialog response, whatever it is configured to check or disk usage. All that monitoring systems will continue to do and continuously collect that data. IGNIO can collect all that data and do analytics on top of it to be able to come up with some kind of a normal behavior analysis or kind of suggest or recommend any kind of abnormal behavior. So IGNIO does not replace monitoring system, it kind of complements or it sits on top of them. The only additional thing IGNIO offers is the health check, which is, like I said, on-demand checks of some specific technical criteria in terms of the health of the system to look at on demand, or it can be scheduled. That's the only additional thing IGNIO offers, but it does not replace Solman.
Okay, thank you. Next question. How long should IGNIO run in an incubation period before the cognitive capabilities are actually visible and it starts to solve errors on its own?
Very good question. Actually, as I said, it's the initial period of deployment and configuration of the capabilities and all, and the blueprint ingestion. The ability of Ignio to cognitively resolve issues definitely depends on two things. One is the blueprint itself, how well the blueprint is built, is all the data necessary available as per the model, and second is the model, the set of already pre-built knowledge modules that it already comes up with. And if there are situations or areas which is outside, just for the sake of discussion, for example, if there's PE that is there, which is coming in the next release, not there in today's release, then you will not have a knowledge to address any of the project planning issues. So obviously that, but for the given knowledge set, for the given set of modules that Ignio addresses to, Ignio does depend a lot on the blueprint and the knowledge. So once that is completely configured, then Ignio can start showing results in terms of actually resolving. And the process of resolving can actually continuously be, as in terms of supervised learning, continuously be upgraded, knowledge can be upgraded to cater to multiple specific scenarios within the organization. For example, custom scenarios. For example, in customizations in the form of tables. So Ignio allows configuration of table-based customization. The sense example is in a pilot that we did, actually the lock table, the locking, the purchase orders or the delivery document locking is not is customized to have a separate table for various different reasons, in terms of capturing more data that they wanted in the lock. Ignio can otherwise would have addressed the SM12 lock table. Now should address a custom table, and that configuration has to be set up to do so that Ignio can start looking at the new table instead of the default table. So those kind of customization also has to be put in, and that's what will have to be done before Ignio starts resolving tickets on its own. So that kind of time that it takes to build that, and typically it would be a few weeks before you can start seeing the actual value slowly that Ignio is able to resolve autonomously all these things. That's it.
Oh, great. Thank you. Next question. Does Ignio include component patching, upgrades, and other complicated activities?
As I said earlier, Ignio, the value of Ignio is not in the patching activity itself, it's more important in the pre-patching activities. Like I said about notes as an example which I gave, it is actually the pre-patching, that is what notes should be applied where, what notes should be applied, which is the critical one to be taken up first. One could always go ahead and do an end-to-end process of applying every note. As I said earlier, the application of note itself could be done by SAP itself autonomously. But what is more important is to analyze which are the critical notes to be applied. And that's what Ignio brings in a value by analyzing it and running it against the business criticality and financial impact, and thereby recommend which are the most important ones to be applied. So yeah, Ignio, as part of the activity, can enable patching and everything. Upgrade is going to be happening as part of the next release that we will have soon. But as I said earlier, more important is the pre and post activities and not really the patching activities. So yes, Ignio is already doing a part of it. Soon the rest part will be done.
Okay. Next question. What are the actions taken by Ignio during a health check? Do we have a list of all the possible actions?
Yeah, I mean, there is a list of things that we can share offline with what all checks are done as part of the health check. But minimally, as I mentioned earlier, it definitely checks for the RSC connectivity between multiple systems and instances and things like that. It does the checks for all different updates. It checks for logs and making sure that there are no logs in the system, so that other than what is supposed to be there as part of the manual updates that may be happening. It also checks for the post-sanity set of things and updates, as they call it. Typically, what kind of updates are happening? Are there any update logs that are open and things like that? So there are many such health checks Ignio does at a technical layer, and soon releasing more on the functional layer also. It does as a ready for business check. That's all. The whole list of things can be separated. But today we already have about 20 plus pre-built health check scenarios already built in Ignio. It's a matter of just adding to the model and adding to the list more health checks.
Okay. Next question. Could you please explain how explain the SAP job analytics capability of Ignio?
Right. As a whole model, IGNIO today has two parts. One is the job operations itself, in the sense of acting on the job in terms of start, stop, whatever changes, status, put off, or night off, multiple things. The other thing is part of the actually the analytics on the job. Now, this is something as additional feature that is there. Is the batch analytics part separately, and that kind of allows you to do multiple things, like such as profiling of the job behavior for every job or job stream. What is the normal behavior that is there, and at the same time actually kind of do a what if analysis on top of the normal behavior as to what will happen if the workload increases, or in other words, the if what analysis, in the sense if I say I need this operation, what all I need to do in terms of the job status, jobs scheduling. All that kind of analysis can be done as part of the batch analytics that is there, as both as a separate product as well as an add-on along with the our SAP operation. So this is a good additional feature that we have built in terms of the analytics. Whole sort of analytics on the batch jobs can share separately details as well.
Okay, great. Next question. Can I selectively turn features or controls on and off in IGNIO in order to save resources such as CPU and memory?
The answer is yes, you can do it at configuration time. At the time of configuring IGNIO to perform autonomous operations, you can do so multiple things. One is the capability level. Should I have this capability, like for example, self-heal, yes or no? Can I have health check, yes or no? So this is done at the configuration time. Second kind of configuration is at IGNIO's operations level, which operations it is allowed to do act for which CI. I mean, there is something called a subscription within IGNIO. You can turn on and off which actions you can take and which actions IGNIO cannot take, and that too on which type of CI, in the sense that I would rather want IGNIO to autonomously self-heal problems only in the development area and not in production area, or vice versa. Those kind of things also can be configured to switch on and off which actions will be taken or not taken. And third level is at the real-time operation. For example, IGNIO has already done a root cause analysis and actually knows exactly what is the fix. But IGNIO actually sends out an approval request. So unless somebody approves for IGNIO to take that action, IGNIO wouldn't take that. But if it is pre-approved as part of the configuration again, IGNIO can go ahead and take those actions. So at all these three levels, that can be, as you termed it, turning on and off for IGNIO to take action.
Okay, thank you. Okay, second to last question. What is the performance impact of IGNIO on a SAP production environment?
Like I said earlier, IGNIO does not sit on the SAP system or the instance. It is actually a separate standalone product. So obviously, the load that IGNIO has is on the IGNIO's hardware or the system that it is deployed on. What it does on the SAP side is actually connecting to SAP systems with SEO is to get the right data in the context of the use case that you're talking about, or in the context of this functional area that you're talking about, and the action that you need to take, actually the actual action itself. So either get the data for a particular use case or perform a specific action on a specific entity. So IGNIO does not do any major processing, and definitely no analytics, absolutely no analytics that it does on the SAP system itself. So obviously there is no reason why it would impact its performance and of that system in terms of CPUs or memories. Whatever that it requires to do a lot of processing on a separate machine there, separate server.
Okay, thank you. Okay, our last question. Does IGNIO integrate with the individual system, a complete landscape, or a solution manager?
Yes, it does. IGNIO, as I said earlier, it's a standalone application. It can connect to every individual SAP instance separately. That same IGNIO can connect to all the different SAP instances, as long as they are connectable via LAN, WAN, VPN, whatever, as long as they are all connectable to IGNIO through these connection mechanisms, and that it can execute RFC connection and all the necessary prerequisites in terms of the service account being there in SAP, in terms of the authorization that engineer will need, that service account will need to execute certain things. As long as those prerequisites are met, yes, engineer does connect as a standalone application to all these SAP instances, to all these applications, whether it's ECC, SRM, whatever, and also to solution manager and ERP. So engineer can connect to all of them. The same engineer instance can connect to all of them.
Okay, great. Well, this concludes our session today. Thank you very much, Mandar, for your time.
Oh, thank you, Tina. Thanks. I think that was a good session. I enjoyed it myself. Thanks, everyone, because there are a lot of good questions. I hope I have answered them, but if you still have further questions or further doubts to the same questions, please feel free to connect to us back through
oh yes, at contact@digitate.com.
Contact@Digitate.
Yes, and also feel free to check our website, digitate.com, for our upcoming webinars. Thank you. See you next time.
Yes. Thanks, Tina, and thanks, everyone. Bye.